I talked to you shortly after the campaign, and one of the things that you were very complimentary about with regard to Branstad's staff was Susan Ely, who was a woman that, again, was actively involved in politics, probably like you to a certain degree, very, very committed, very smart. Did she make have a big impact on the debate prep at all? Did you tell that or not?
I couldn't tell.
One of the things you had mentioned was that she was out in the audience kind of giving him hand signals and encouraging during the course of the debate.
There was one debate where he had notes and we were not supposed to. He never said anything about it. I figured, you know, it would be seen as sour grapes, and so I didn't ever say anything.
One final question. You weren't allowed to pick your running mate in that election, is that right?
Right.
It's all done?
Yes.
Did you run with Anderson?
Yes, Bob Anderson. And, you know, everybody else was elected. I had long skirt tails. We won both houses of the legislature. We won all the state house offices, and you know, we lost the governor.
Back then, even though Anderson ran on a separate line, so to speak, on the ballot, did you try to coordinate activities with him?
Oh yes, we did lots of things together. All the members of the ticket did things together.
Let's talk a little bit about the next 2 years to 1984 with John Glenn. What happened with regard to that particular involvement?
Well, John Glenn and I became friends in that period of time, and he was and remains an absolutely wonderful human being. He was not politically very close to me. He's a much more conservative person than I am, but I just thought that his character was so strong that he would make a wonderful president. I still think that. I think he has an extraordinarily strong character, which, of course, has shown in all the work that he's done over the course of these many years. So I signed on with him. I became his national policy director, and it didn't go very far. We were not successful. Being
someone who had just run statewide and very highly regarded, were you sought out by any of the other candidates in '84?
Yes, I was Harkin's chief surrogate during that election year.
Okay. And so you helped him a lot with his first run for Senate?
Yes, and we had, you know, an army of volunteers. We did so much with volunteers in 1982 that we had an absolute army of volunteers, and we tried to move them all over into his campaign, and I think we did pretty well with that.
1988, you supported Paul Simon, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
That was an unusual candidacy because it wasn't really on the radar screen until he put it on the radar screen later in the election.
Yes.
Did you get involved before he was, so to speak, kind of on the radar screen?
Yes, I got involved very early with him. David Axelrod was in that campaign.
Wow.
David Axelrod, that's how I met David Axelrod in 1988 in the Paul Simon campaign. And we were both, devoted to Paul Simon.
In 2000, you were actively involved in Al Gore's campaign, is that right? Mm-hmm. In 92, there really wasn't much going on here in Iowa, right? We had Harkin running and...
You know, I can't remember 92. I remember that Clinton won, and I remember I didn't support him until after the process was completed, but I don't remember who I did support.
Probably, it might have been Harkin. It was either Harkin. Some people.
Oh, it was Harkin. Of course, Harkin ran. That's why I can't remember it. It was pretty brief, and we didn't hardly have any caucuses because he was on the ticket.
Right,
oh gosh, I took him all over the country and introduced him to trial lawyers and stuff like that. I forgot all about that. Yes, it was Harkin. I supported Harkin in 1992. And then when Harkin got out, I did not take another position. I just didn't care enough about anybody else to take the risk.
That's fair. So did you actually go to New Hampshire with Harkin? Or not so much?
I don't know.
Sounds like
I think I did. I've
But
been to New Hampshire many times, and I can't remember if I specifically went with Harkin or not.
It sounds like you were helping him with some of the fundraising for his next campaign.
Yes. Well, as much as I could do, and mostly with trial lawyers. 1992 is when I was the head of the trial lawyers. I was the president of the Association of Trial Lawyers of America, so I had some ability to bring together funders for him.
And you helped to put Iowa on the map, but you also were the first woman, is that right, in that position?
Yes, yes.
Going through that process, did you find that the process was it much more equal at that time than it was when you were asked questions about U.S. District Attorney?
No.
There's still a little
No, it was horrible. It was just horrible. It was. I only won my first election by 21 votes, and only that thanks to Vern Lawyer, who came back from London to be my old boy. I needed an old boy, and I needed someone with who was a founder of what was NACA at the time. So I called him in London and I said, "You want me to win this?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, then you better get on a plane and come home.
So anytime you become the first woman, anything, it's always been barricades you've had to knock down.
Yes, many obstacles have been placed in the way.
In 2004, you decided to again put yourself more or less on the national map,
Yes,
and you got involved in John Edwards' campaign, is
I
that right?
did.
How long had you known John Edwards?
About 20 years. I knew him as a trial lawyer in North Carolina, and I knew him from my service as president of ADLA, and I thought I knew him really well. So did his wife.
Taking apart the private John Edwards, what was the public candidate like? Were you impressed with him or not?
Oh, absolutely. He was an excellent campaigner. He had lots of energy. He had, that the last 2 weeks of that campaign, when the trend was in our direction, was just fabulous, just fabulous.
And you almost knocked off John Kerry,
Yes, we did.
closed the gap.
Yes, closed the gap, gained 20 points.
Did you play a similar role in 2008?
I did.
And how did that campaign shape up?
That was different. Of course, his wife had cancer, and it was, we did 99 counties, and it was very difficult. He was more difficult to reach personally. He was more subdued. There were lots of things going on in his life, I think, some of which I did not know about.
But you could detect that a little bit of the change from 2004.
Yes, I think we all felt that way.
He still did really well. He almost won again.
Yes, he did. I know. But we knew, Rob Tully and I, and John Edwards, there wasn't any place to go after this. Our whole strategy was to win Iowa and to use that as a slingshot into the other races. We didn't have the money to do it any other way. And once he lost in Iowa, it was over.
Was there any temptation to support Hillary? Who was trying to
Oh, gosh, yes. I just love Hillary Clinton. And, Jerry Crawford, my very good friend, was with Hillary, and she called me all the time. I have her cell phone number.
But you felt disloyalty to John because
I
you'd helped him?
felt like if I deserted him, he wouldn't be able to run. I mean, it was that simple. When Elizabeth announced that she had cancer, it was in March, as I recall. And at that time, I was very seriously considering Hillary. And then when he decided he was going to stay in the race, I felt like I couldn't do anything except stay with him.
You received the Iowa Hall of Fame Outstanding Supporter Award in 2007.
Yes.
There's lots of awards the Democratic Party could give you. That was one that you were able to get. Anything that comes to mind about that particular process? And
Well, that was, as I recall, all the presidential candidates were there, or many of the presidential candidates were there. That was really very much a thrill to me. I remember that evening very well.
you had a chance to speak,
Yes.
right? And what message did you want to kind of impart on the people who were there about the Democratic Party?
Well, first I wanted to say thank you.
Uh-huh.
And then I wanted the message was mostly thank you. The message was, thank you for being involved, thank you for giving of your time and your energy and your money, and being loyal to the Democratic Party and making all of this possible.
Well, in 2010, you again helped out the Democratic Party so much by running as Charles Grassley. I'm sorry you didn't get elected because you know how I felt about that race,
Yeah.
but tell me a little bit about that. Anything that you recall about that race that you think would be significant to remember?
Things had changed so much from 1982, and I felt imprisoned in my home because all I did, or all it seemed to me like I was able to do, was make phone calls from morning till night. And that, I think, is a common complaint of people who are in office or people who are running for office, and that is that so much of your time, almost all of your time, is spent raising money. And I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I loved campaigning. I loved meeting the people of the state of Iowa. I loved all that. The smartest decision he made was not coming out of his house from July on. you know, from July on, he made no public appearances.
I know that you would have, if you closed in the polls, you would have had to campaign, and that was the time when you would have had him.
Yeah.
But it just didn't get close enough for him
No,
to be forced out.
we were 8 points away in June, and then he just rolled over me.
Well, I remember in 1982 that fundraising was important, but I also remember so many stories about you traveling all over the state. And
Yes.
It sounds like it was a lot more fun.
It was a lot more fun. I just loved my 1982 campaign. Even knowing the outcome, I would do it again. And that's kind of what I thought I was doing, but I wasn't.
Well, I know that you're founder and chair of the first Iowa Women's Political Caucus. I wanted to ask you, since that has been an important thing that you've done for women all across the state to be a trendsetter, is there anything you would tell a young woman who's thinking about getting into politics right now?
Do it, you know, absolutely do it. There are still barriers. Don't kid yourself. There are still going to be people who won't vote for you because you're a woman, but there will be far more, I think, at this point, who will welcome you with open arms and want to hear what you have to say and be very interested in supporting your race. We've got so many wonderful women in the pipeline. When I started out in 1972, there was Minette Doder and Joan Lipsky, and maybe 2 or 3 other women. But it's changed so much and so dramatically. Women are in positions of leadership in the legislature. They have an enormous impact on the legislation that goes through. Now, Minette and Joan had an enormous impact on the legislature as well. When we first started out in the Iowa Women's Political Caucus, I had a computer read the Iowa Code. Computers at the time occupied huge rooms that you had to keep them cold for some reason. But I ran through man, woman, boy, girl, lady, gentleman, all that I could think of, gender-specific words, and it printed out a stack of pages this big. And we systematically undertook, Minette and Joan and I. Minette was in the Senate, Joan was in the House, she was a Republican, and I would write laws over in my office as an assistant attorney general, and Minette would pass them in the Senate, Joan would pass them in the House. We did a lot of that without people even knowing what we were doing. We changed the entire retirement system of Iowa before anyone recognized what we were doing. So it was wonderful fun and very exciting.
Well, this is the first time I've known about that conspiracy, but
yeah.
Now I can go ahead and check the results in the Iowa Code.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. We changed one in the omnibus bill, which we got tired of doing it piecemeal. We did everything that was left all at once. And one of the things in the omnibus bill was letting beauticians cut men's hair. And it was the most controversial thing in the bill. We changed sentencing for women. We changed inheritance tax for women. We changed a lot of stuff, but that aspect of the bill was generating a lot of calls, and so we undertook to make more calls. And I got a call from one of the senators saying, "Okay, call them off." I said, "Well, are we good?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Okay." Willie Glanton and I met when she came to speak to the first meeting that I ran for the Polk County Young Democrats, and it was right after the Civil Rights Act had passed, the Equal Employment Opportunity Act, and we were invaded by the White Citizens Council. It was more excitement than I could hardly bear. But she was so gracious, so humane. I just was amazed. I was just amazed. And when she decided to run for the state legislature, I said I would help her. And I ended up not only running her campaign, I was the only staff person. We worked the precincts. We had an organized plan. We knocked on the doors. We went down the street side by side. And we were the only 2 people who thought she'd win. I want to tell you a little story about Art Hitt. When I was running for the president of the Polk County Young Democrats, he was the head of the Polk County Old Democrats. And I went to see him. He said to me, you really want to be careful about getting involved in politics. And he leaned across his desk and he says, because once you get in it, it gets into your blood and you won't be able to get out. So was he ever right?